Okay, it is September the 20th, the last day of summer of 2022. Tomorrow will be the fall solstice, and we look forward to the fall season. The changing of the seasons is one of the things we really like coming back to Idaho to live here. All right, we're going to go on with this. This is chapter 5, which deals with my recollections about my mom. Well, obviously, I have lots of recollections, and I mentioned most of them in the chapter, but there were 2 or 3 thoughts that I had over and above what was in the chapter. First of all, my mom and my dad met because of music. She was a singer in Paris, and my dad was a dance band. He had his own dance band in high school, and both being musically inclined, they met, and she was going to sing with the band and her trio and dad and so forth. Anyway, the first time they met, I remember my mom talking to me about this. She said she went home that night and told her mom that she had met the man that she wanted to marry, and that was my dad. Now, at this time, I think she was like 16, maybe 17 years of age. She was still in high school. And to go home and tell her mom something like that, I never believed in love at first sight, but I guess that's possible. And it certainly was in this instance. I remember her saying to me the thing that impressed her most about my dad was his hands. Being a saxophone and clarinet player, he was very dexterous with his hands and his fingers, and that was one attribute that apparently she thought was pretty cool. So at any rate, that was the first thought that I had concerning my mom here. The second one, I mentioned, she was a singer, and she was. My dad was a great musician. We talk about that later in another chapter in the book, so I won't go into that. But music, of course, I mentioned this later on, has always been a big part of my life. But the first big song I think I sang in church, not How Much Is That Doggy in the Window in primary, that was the first one, but the one when I was about 12 or 11 or 12 or something was called The Holy City. That's the first, and that's a hard song. It really is a hard song. So I worked at it and memorized it and so forth. And one recollection I had is that both my mom and my dad helped me with that, with phrasing and swells getting louder and diminuendos and soft and speeding up the tempo at certain areas and slowing it down for emphasis and that sort of thing. I remember them saying, particularly my mom said, you need to bear your testimony when you're singing. And I have remembered that, and I tried to do that the thousands of times that I've sung in various situations. And that's been a great thought for me as we approach music here. It's not just notes, it's music, and if you bear your testimony or convey deep feelings as you're singing, it conveys them to those who are listening as well. All right, let's see, a third thought. My mom, later on in life, after my dad passed away, went on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She was called to Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi, which is a great example to all of us. She was in her early mid-60s, I believe, mid-60s at least. Yeah, mid-60s at least. I don't remember her exact age, but she was getting up there. At any rate, she went to Jackson, Mississippi. Being a bumpkin from Idaho, she had never experienced anything like the South. Well, the drawl, the Southern drawl and all that sort of thing. But the thing that I remember that she has recounted to me on more than one occasion is the attitude of the Southerners toward blacks in the South. Now, this was back, many years ago when she served, back in the 70s, as I recall. But they were hadn't gotten over the segregation and so forth, even though segregation was illegal. Brown versus the Board of Education to integrate schools and the Voting Rights Acts and all those things have been passed. But in the South, change is hard and slow. Well, she was taken aback by this. Now, as you know, in a missionary experience, they have companions. She was assigned to a section of Jackson, Mississippi, where she made great friends. She'd talk over the fence with the people next to her and behind her, and they liked her, and they invited her over and gave her, she'd give them cookies, and they'd give her bread, and what all. They were great friends. Well, as you know, during the mission, companions are switched. Well, during the course of the mission, my mom's companion changed from a white individual to a black individual from, I believe it was Nigeria. Her name was Sister Oriang. Oriang. Well, my mom obviously hadn't had a whole lot of experience with blacks, but she accepted her and loved her and enjoyed her and so forth, even though she was a little bit, her ways were a little bit different than hers, but that's okay. At any rate, to make a long story short here, my mom would go out and talk to the people over the fence again, the neighbors and around the neighborhood and so forth. And they all knew my mom. But all of a sudden, the neighbors shunned my mom. They wouldn't talk to her. They wouldn't associate with her. They wouldn't do anything with her. And my mom thought, what in the world have I done? What have I done to offend these people? I've got to go make this right. So she went around and asked them, said, if I've offended you in any way, did I say something that was negative or offensive to you, to all these neighbors? And they said their response to a man was, or a woman, your companion is not welcome here. We think you need to change companions back to a white companion. Again, those racist views in the South were not easily done away with. But it wasn't anything my mom did. It was because she had a black companion that she was shunned in the South there for a while. I remember her telling me about that one. All right. That's the few thoughts I had about my mom, and her impact has been immeasurable on me, of course. Let me give you a little update on my mom. We went to see her last week. In fact, a week ago yesterday, we were there and visited with her. She's 98 years of age. Her mentality is good. She does repeat things once in a while, but there's no loss of memory, at least long-term memory. Short-term memory is not great, but she can remember things 50 years ago, like they happened yesterday, and I think that's typical for when you get a little bit older. But mentally, she's pretty sharp. Physically, not too bad. She has a difficult time standing up, but when she stands up and gets her walker out there, she can shuffle along with that walker quite well, quite rapidly. She is opinionated, has been. As she gets older, she gets more and more opinionated. She's right about everything, and that's okay. We'll just say that's okay, Mom. Yep, that's good. However, she does make comments that are offensive to people, and I wish that did not happen, even to her own family members, Tom and Jan particularly. Tom has handled her finances for all these years that she's been alone and so forth, and done a great job, but she wants to know all the details about her finances, and Tom explains it to her, and she has some stocks and so forth. But at any rate, to make a long story short, she has offended Tom more than once about handling her finances well. And then Jan, of course, Jan and Gary, they're there, right there in Soda Springs with her, and so they bear the brunt of some of this, more so than the rest of us who are away. But so I wish you would think before she talks, but I've mentioned that to her in a gentle way before, but she says, no, if right's right and wrong's wrong, and I'm right and you're wrong, I need to tell you under no certain without pulling any punches. So she continues to do that, but she's doing quite well. However, personal opinion, let me label it as such. I believe it's just about time for she and Dad to have a joyful reunion. That certainly is not up to me. That's left in the hands of the Lord, and He'll take care of it. But it would be a blessing. It would be tough for us here left on the earth. We'd miss her, and we certainly will when the time comes. But I'm looking forward to that day when she and my dad can be reunited and re-cement that relationship that was so positive for them and for we as a family as we spent all of those years together. So there's the thoughts I had about my mom. Thanks very much for listening. See you again.